Hi everyone, my name is Becca. I'm a student nurse, first year, and my aim is to get British Sign Language on the curriculum for nursing, paramedics, and midwifery, all healthcare professionals really. So over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be doing some videos, the alphabet, colours, pain, things like that. So if there's anything you would like to know, then just leave a comment and I'll try my best. So I thought I'd start with some deaf awareness, how to get a deaf person's attention, for example, some terminology that is not acceptable, some terminology that is acceptable, and then we'll go on to the alphabet. So first off, if a deaf person's not looking in your direction, how are you going to get their attention? You can't shout because they can't hear you. Don't always assume that if somebody's got hearing aids or a cochlear implant that they can hear everything that a hearing person can, because that's not the case. Sometimes someone with a hearing aid or a cochlear implant can just hear background noises, or it could help develop their speech, but a lot of the time this isn't the case for deaf people. So a good way to get someone's attention is to just tap them on the shoulder. A lot of people think, oh no, I'm not going to be touching somebody on the shoulder, that's a bit rude, but it's very acceptable in the deaf community to just tap somebody on the shoulder. A good way of getting somebody attention is to turn the light switch on and off. So I thought that was amazing myself, that if you're deaf, a lot of people, if the lights were to go on and off, a deaf person would automatically look at the light switch to see if it's somebody trying to get their attention. And another way is to stamp on the floor, because the vibrations would carry over and they'd feel it. So it doesn't work on all floors. So obviously if you're jumping up and down on the floor and you're not getting their attention, then try something else. So I thought I'd add in a couple of terminology that is not acceptable. You will still hear it about, because, you know, society just doesn't like change. Some things you may hear like deaf and dumb, which is really, really, really not acceptable. It's very offensive. You will still hear the old generation saying things like deaf and dumb, stone deaf, deaf mute. These are absolutely not acceptable. Things we like to use now is hard of hearing, deaf, deaf without speech, deaf with speech. These are all things that are better and more accepted than things like hearing impaired as well. So a lot of the deaf community, or people who are hard of hearing, don't like to be called hearing impaired because it's seen as that they're broken, that something's wrong, and a lot of people don't feel that way. A lot of people who are deaf or hard of hearing embrace that this is just who they are. They're not impaired, they're not broken. So you do still hear some of the terminology around, especially in medical forms. A lot of medical forms do state, are you hearing impaired? Do you have a hearing impairment? It's just not very nice for some people to hear anyway. So it's up to us to challenge that and say this isn't really acceptable. I found that a lot of people do still use deaf and dumb, because some people don't see it as unacceptable terminology. They've just heard it over the generations and it's just passed down and nobody sort of corrected them. So if you do hear somebody saying things like deaf and dumb, stone deaf, or deaf as a post, things like that, then just turn around and just let them know this isn't acceptable terminology anymore. And it is highly offensive to people in the deaf community.